Pittsburgh Steelers fans, hey, howdy. It is Monday. Usually people, they loathe Mondays, but not when you've got the hangover to recover from. And even though it's the off season, there's always something to have a good drink about. And whether it be a good reason or a bad reason, BTSC, that's BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and Brian Anthony Davis, which is me, and this dude, Tony J. Defio, will be here to help nurse you through that hangover. We've got the cure, and the cure is not clear. It's not brown. It's not with bubbles. It's just pure black and gold. Tony Defio, what is going on?
I am fantastic. What an intro. I mean, I'm pumped up. I feel like you sound like Robert Williams from Good Morning Vietnam. I'm ready to go.
Adrian Cronauer. Wow, that's pretty cool. I do appreciate that. I love it.
It's pretty spot on in my opinion.
Well, thank you. If I'm being compared to in any way to Robin Williams, that is just, right. I don't belong in the same sentence as Robin Williams. The guy is just a pure comedic genius, and I'm not even close. But thank you. I appreciate it coming from you. Makes me feel good. So I'm done waxing Tony's car. He's done waxing mine. Let's wax your cars. If you are in the live chat right now, man, we love you. If you are listening to us on any of our audio platforms, we love you too. So you're on Facebook, YouTube, on the audio side. Thank you for taking the time out to trust us with good old-fashioned Pittsburgh talk. And the hangover, it's different. Hangover's not straight news. No, we bring up news. We bring up things that are going on in the world of the Men of Steel, but we're going to go a different path. We're unorthodox when it comes to Steelers podcast because we like to have fun and we like to do some things and definitely add you. And we need the live chat today, Tony. This is a big one for the live chat because we are going to go through a lot of teams and talk about a lot of teams and talk about perceptions. Now, if you did get a chance to check out my show yesterday, Tales from 2 a.m., it was a perception show, and this show was actually going to be the title for Tales from 2 a.m., but I thought we can do this so much better, Tony and myself. I thought it would be better, and with all of you on our primetime Monday night slot. So I thought that would be great, but this is kind of a spinoff, and the two shows kind of go hand in hand. So yesterday's shows, as I see some people that were definitely in the live chat yesterday, if you listened or watched yesterday's show, then you know that we talked about the Steelers fan base and what is the perception of the Steelers fans from other fan bases around the league. A lot of us, we hate the Patriots fan base. We hate them. They're obnoxious. They win all the time. They do the "you hate us because you ain't us" kind of thing. Right. And, hate that. But are we like that? And a lot of people think that we're whiny. A lot of people think that we're obnoxious because the 6 rings thing. And, sure. You can say all that, but that's your perception. But we are proud black and gold fans, and we're proud of our team, and we're going to do that. I always subscribe to if you come into my living room, just don't pee on my couch thing. And I said that yesterday. And that's like, hey, anybody that comes in the live chat, we've got Aaron, who's a Baltimore fan that comes in a lot. And he kind of gets it now. At first, he came and talked smack. Now we welcome him in and said, hey, just be cool and you'll be good. And so he's a part of us. Big E Bronco was the same thing. He really didn't talk smack, but he was talking about the Broncos. Some people went after him, and we're like, hey, you're always welcome here, man. And so it's always cool to have fans of other teams to get their perspectives as long as you're cool.
Right.
And that's kind of what we have. So what I'm looking at here is we're really not talking about the fans here, but it's kind of the same way. Because if you look at it, villains.
Right.
How much around the league, if you are a fan of another team, are the Steelers villains? And that's something we're going to talk about throughout this show. We know who the Steelers villains are, and it's not just AFC North. So, Tony, when you think of the number one Steeler villains, of course, you're going to mention the AFC North teams.
Right.
So let's talk about those AFC North teams because it kind of changes as we go. I mean, I would think that, 7-8 years ago, it was kind of more Cincinnati as the number one villains because of the Vontaze Burfict factor. So let me go ahead and ask you this. We had the Myles Garrett factor last year. We always have the black and purple factor up with the Baltimore Ravens. So let me say this. If I were to ask you to rank 3-1, just the Tony DeFeo version of the Steelers villains in the AFC North alone, could you do that right now definitively? And my other question is, does it change throughout the years?
I think. Sorry, I'm getting all worked up. And I almost looked over my microphone, but the 2 and 3 have changed. I'd say it's always one is the Ravens with no question. The Ravens are the number one villain in the North. They're a lot like the Steelers. They have a stable front office. They've won a championship recently. They're always contending for the division. They did a great job transitioning from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. It's not an easy thing to do in the NFL, as a lot of teams find out. And they're always in it. John Harbaugh is an excellent coach. So they're number one. As far as 2 and 3, it was the Bengals for the longest time because they were successful. But I was never really that afraid of the Bengals. No matter how good they were, no matter if they won a division or were a wild card, I always thought Pittsburgh would beat them when it counted the most. And so far, they always have. And then the Browns were number 3 for the longest time, but now they're definitely number 2. And it's more to do with the fans than the players. The fans are really getting full of themselves, which I guess I can't blame them. They've had such a long drought since they came back into the league in 1999. But now, they won one playoff game, and now they're the greatest thing ever. And the Steelers suck, and big bum, and all this other stuff you see. And I think they have a lot to prove before they can be the Steelers' number one rivals again. So that's why I hate them, but I don't hate them as much as the Ravens.
So let me ask you this. Now, you mentioned the fan base. How much do the fans work into your equation? Or do you look at the team? Because here's my thing. When I saw Vontaze Burfict doing what he was doing, and some of those other guys too on that team, I would just get livid.
Right.
It was the same thing with Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs, T-Sizzle. Those guys would drive me absolutely crazy.
Right.
The one thing is they were good, and if you look at Ray Lewis, I'll never forget Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs. I'll never forget the bounty that they never got punished for, and there was a bounty in 2008.
Right.
And we all know about it. They said it.
Yeah.
Then they kind of backed off, but they said it. So my question, though, here is when you have fans of the other team, and you got to understand, I live here in Maryland. We might have some people that live in Cincy. Some people live in Cleveland. We had somebody on the show that lived in Cleveland. So the Browns are her public enemy number one. So my question is this. Do the fans take it to the next level, or do the Myles Garretts and for me, Baker Mayfield I hate that guy. I can't stand that guy. So it's not the Cleveland fans. I think the Cleveland fans to me are a byproduct. The Cleveland fans are actually good fans because they were long suffering, a lot like the Steelers fans were before they started to win. And then then there was a lot more pride involved. Right. But this team was long suffering, and the way they acted during the whole Myles Garrett debacle was pretty awful. But some people on the live chat are saying that it's them. It's just a team alone. So do you take that into consideration?
A little bit. with the Myles Garrett thing and the helmet smack of Mason Rudolph, and then the accusations afterwards that he really never backed down from, that played a big part. But it's really, for me, it's the fans that they really play a big part in my considering them a new villain, moving up the ranks past Cincinnati into the number 2 slot. Because I mean, they're just like the way they went on and supported Garrett 2 years ago, and it was pretty obvious that he was the one at fault there. And all the emails I received from people, and again, them acting, like all of a sudden they've been a great franchise for forever because they won that playoff game last year. They really haven't proven anything yet. And maybe I'm bitter over that playoff loss, which obviously it plays a big part in everything because they're the closest rival as far as proximity to the Steelers. They've been their longtime rival since the 60s, and now they have the bragging rights. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm a little bitter over it. But yeah, the fans play a huge part as far as Browns, the Browns being a new villain for me, more so than the Ravens. I don't even think of Ravens fans ever. It's more like Ray Lewis and John Harbaugh and Suggs and those guys. I really don't like them. But the fans, I don't even think of Baltimore's fans.
Now, well, I live in Maryland. Co-editors Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, they live in Maryland. So they've got to deal with it. They're not as bad, but there is a fair weather factor. But I think that fair weather factor is getting a little less and less because more and more as they go, they're a very good team. I respect the heck out of the Baltimore Ravens as far as I respect their organization because Ozzie Newsome was amazing. Eric DaCosta, right. Just as good. I gave him the nickname. I don't like John Harbaugh whatsoever. Can't stand the guy.
Me either.
I gave him the Wang Harb's nickname, and it stuck. And everybody, there's people mentioning up, and I hardly even say it anymore. But right. It's something that has stuck because. Man, that was 2 years ago I gave him that nickname. And just I can't stand that guy. And he's one of the reasons I can't take the Ravens that much. But as far as players go, I probably despise guys on the Browns the most. So my public enemy number 1 is probably the Browns right now. Now, when they're playing the black and purple, that's a different story. I always root against them, but there's a lot of respect for guys like Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, and a lot of people don't like his style of play, but we'll say that he's going to tank in the playoffs. But no, I mean he's done really well. Right. So I can honestly say that. None of the playoffs, but he did get his first playoff win last year. It's just the fact that there's maybe 1 or 2 guys that linger from the past that I can't stand. Now, the Baltimore Ravens, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, they still hate Hines Ward to this day. Yeah. He's been retired for 8-9 years.
Right. That's a good rival.
And they will forever hate this man.
Right.
And there's still polls, like the Baltimore Sun will do a poll, and they'll ask, what player do you hate the most in any sport? And it's still going to be number 86, Hines Ward.
I love it. I love that. I love it. That's
and
great.
So that's going to get. We're going to bring that in a little bit later because the name of the show is what's the Steelers villain factor. So we want to talk about that. So we're going to talk about that in the second half of the show. So stick around for that. But we're still talking about the villains here for the Pittsburgh Steelers fans. So we've established the AFC North. Now, when you go the entire AFC, you mix the entire AFC in, there's a few more villains in there. And we know the number 1 non-AFC villain has got to be up north, right, Tony?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The one who prevented Pittsburgh from getting to and winning more Super Bowls, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Now, John C. brings up another team. The Raiders. And so this is funny because you bring up the Raiders, and if you ask my dad and you ask your family members, and a lot of people, I mean, if you ask a person over 50, closer to 60, they're going to say the Raiders any day of the week and twice on Sundays. Right. And the reason being is because that's it. I mean, gosh, you had Chuck Noll called him the criminal element.
Yeah.
There was lawsuits.
Right.
You had Jack Tatum and George Atkinson, and you had them leveling Lynn Swann, and we were just as bad. We were doing stuff to them too.
Right.
I mean, you say this all the time, Tony. You think Jack Lambert was a choir boy and going to sit around and let you do that one-sided?
Right.
No.
Right. Well, like what the heck's his name? The linebacker, Villapiano. I forget his name. Anyway, he said
Villapiano.
Yeah, Villapiano. They're calling us dirty, those maniacs over there. That was a perfect way to describe it, because they were a bunch of maniacs too. Yeah, they were similar to each other. That's kind of like the Steelers and the Ravens have similar organizations. That's how they were. They went about things in a similar fashion, and they had similar success. And one was always taking away what the other one wanted.
Madden landed in Pittsburgh, says Dave Shipley, in the 70s and said, "Why do I feel like I just landed in Vietnam?" Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah. And we just talked about this on the Retro Show. We were on the Retro Show on the 30th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, and it was the Steelers and Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, December 23rd, 2002. And we just did this game recently, and John Madden was in the booth, and there's a few people like Franco, a couple of people sent messages to John Madden. He was cool about it, but he's still upset.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He
will go to his grave, and will still forever be mad about that game.
Yeah. That's a great quote. The Vietnam quote. I never heard that before, but
I never did either.
I could picture Madden saying that. That's fantastic. That's great. It perfectly probably describes what it was like showing for opponents showing up to Three River Stadium back in the Steelers' heyday of the 70s, especially a team like the Raiders.
Now, Mark Tobin has just he's chimed in with a couple teams, and I always respect what Mark has to say. I need some clarification on this because of the Saints, because I'm not seeing I just like to know, because I'm not sure where the Saints come into play here, but you probably have a good reason. So I have no problem with that. And we're going to get to the NFC in a little bit. So if you could throw that up there. But of course, the Patriots are there. The Raiders, I think now, I don't think we think of the Raiders as a problem.
No.
They're just another AFC team. They play us tough a lot.
Right. Yeah. The last 10 years or so, they've become one of those quote unquote Tomlin losses every year, every other year. They seem to run into the Raiders, and when the Raiders are performing poorly and Pittsburgh needs to win, the Raiders somehow find a way to beat them and really put a kibosh on their season at the end of the year. That's how I think of the Raiders now, but their fans are still pretty passionate. So when I think of the Raiders, I think of their fans, and they're still kind of a rival to me. But you're right, I don't think of them the way I used to in the 80s.
So Clarence Washington says the Houston Oilers. Now that they're the Tennessee Titans, no, probably not, because they became the Tennessee Titans after they moved. They were the Tennessee Oilers. Now they're the Titans. But that's another one. And I'd love to know Clarence's demographic, because if you're going to ask my dad, he's going to say the Raiders. He's definitely going to see. I know what NFC team he's saying, and we'll talk about that later. But he's definitely going to say the Oilers too. But I want to say something real quick. A lot of people are saying the word rivalry. And I'm not talking rivalry here, Tony. I'm really not. Right. I'm talking about who's the villain. Who's the team that you watch that makes your blood boil. I'm not talking about who the Steelers, they gear up for more. I'm talking you as a fan. Who do you hate? Who do you watch them play a team that's not the Steelers? Right. And you want them to lose so bad that you could taste it. Because I'm telling you, it was so hard for me to watch it's so hard for me to watch a Super Bowl with Baltimore in it.
Exactly.
Knowing that they have a chance to win. It's tough for me to watch a Super Bowl with the New England Patriots in it, but it's great to watch a Super Bowl with the New England Patriots in it when they're playing a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who I can't stand. I was the biggest Eagle fan in the world that day.
Right, exactly.
Now, there's another team that I was waiting for somebody to bring up, and they did. And it's right here. And this is a team that a lot of you are not going to bring up as probably the biggest villains for the Steelers. And Tony, I bet you if you're not looking at the live chat, I think you might have a tough time coming up with this team, but it's there. It's a team that I think the Steelers are 12-20 against in their lifetime.
I know who you mean.
Garrett Slingerland, good job, man, because I was waiting and I was bringing it up. The Denver Broncos have got to be huge villains.
Right.
I was a fan of Elway. I definitely was. But I had an Elway jersey and I had some orange stuff.
Me too.
Back in the 80s. I was in junior high and high school. But that all went out the window when they played each other.
Yeah. And even going back to the 70s, it seemed like anytime they played each other in an important game, especially in the postseason, the Broncos won more than they lost. It seems like if you go back and look at all their postseason matchups, it seemed like the Broncos always got the upper hand more often than not.
So, that's, man, I'm so glad Garrett brought that one up because I think that's really interesting. If you look at Andrew Wilbar said Titans in the terrible towel. Yeah, I think that was I just don't think they still have the villain factor that I look at that on the schedule and say, man, I can't wait to get a hold of them. Chargers, man, I don't care about. Chiefs. Some people are going to put the Chiefs on their villain factor right now. But I'm not.
Yeah.
Maybe because they're good.
Right.
But, and then Wes, I got to bring up Wes here. Denver, we will never live down that stupid decision to out blitz against Tebow and give him the wide open pass. Demaryius Thomas beat one of my guys, Ike Taylor, on that.
I remember that game. I was bowling. I had to bowl. It was my official league night, and my two teammates, they were like, after that loss, they're like, Tony, it's just a game. Like, I'll never forget that. It's just a game. You don't understand. It was, Anyway, my bowling got a lot better after that game was over.
Let me bring up Sherry Richards. She brings up a good point. The Broncos are not what I consider a villain. Maybe the Broncos are more of a rival but some people are going to think that they are the villain because they always knock Pittsburgh down. But let me let you break the tie, Tony. Do you think that the Broncos are a Steelers villain?
I'd say it's close, but I'd say given all the heartbreak I've felt from them in the postseason with the 89 divisional round, the 97 AFC Championship game, the Tebow game, and I realized that they got one back when they beat, or they got a couple back in 84 and then again in 2005 with the AFC Championship game. It just still feels like they're a villain. I mean, I liked them a lot as a kid, like you. I was a big John Elway fan, but it feels like they're a villain to me. Like when they play them in the postseason, it's the complete opposite of what I feel going against the Bengals, for example. I feel like they're gonna lose the game.
Now people are gonna put the Chargers on there because of a playoff loss. You could put the Jaguars on there for playoff losses. You can put some other teams on there, but I think when you look at the number one villains, I think we know our top four. I think the top four are the three North teams and that team up north that plays in the AFC East, the Patriots.
Right.
Who's public enemy number one out of those four? Is it the Patriots?
I would say so. I'd say it's close between the Patriots and the Ravens, but the Steelers have won some big games over the Ravens in the postseason, and they've edged them out a lot in the regular season as far as division titles. But the Patriots, they can never solve them in the postseason. Time and time again, it was just a nightmare. So I would have to say the Patriots, and then you throw in the Spygate and Belichick and Tom Brady and the man with everything. It has to be the Patriots.
I'm still thinking right now that the Ravens are the one that I would put at number one there, even though I have respect for them. They're still villains to a lot of Steeler Nation. And if I'm looking up in the press box and I'm looking at all of Steeler Nation, I think they're going to put the Ravens first, the Patriots second, the Browns third, and the Bengals fourth right now. Now, let's go over to the NFC. So here we go. We know who we just talked about, the Raiders. The Cowboys last a little bit longer because of 1995. And everybody will always hate the Cowboys in black and gold. I can't stand the Cowboys. I think they're of no consequence right now.
Right.
But they're always going to be villains because of that. I don't think it's calmed down. But I'm going to give you a team, and somebody mentioned it up there. I'm going to give you a team that I think is one of the top NFC villains, and it's not the one that somebody else mentioned. A lot of people think it could be the 49ers. But I really think that could be a rivalry just on paper because of the team of the 70s and the team of the 80s. The team that I'm thinking of that could be the number one villain in the NFC, besides the Dallas Cowboys, Kyle got it, Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to like any team from Philly. It just really is. It'd be a lot more fun if they were in the same conference. You talk about or the same division, I guess it would be. You talk about a bloodbath every time they played each other. But yeah, I think once every few years is enough.
So yeah, I think that is a major rivalry because it's for state supremacy, and man, they have not won in that park in that city since 1965, even though they've won a few times in Pittsburgh. Now we are going to go ahead and wrap this segment up, but I'm not going to ignore a couple people. Cree, Garrett, I'm not going to ignore you. I'm going to tell you when we come back after the break why the Seattle Seahawks are not Steelers villains, but I'm going to tell you how I can equate them to the 1988 Pittsburgh Pirates and the New York Mets. We'll do that right after this on the Steelers Hangover. Stick with us. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Steelers Retro Show. My name is Brian Anthony Davis from BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Tony Julius Defio is right here with me. TJD, what's going on?
I am doing great. The first half of this show is so much fun. I get my blood boiling thinking about all these not rivals, as you said, villains, teams you love to hate. So yeah, I can't wait for part two.
So I will say this, that we were going to make that a whole lot shorter, but it went longer because it was fun.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about the Eagles being a villain. And I wanted to go ahead and tie this into news today. The Eagles got one a little bit over on the Steelers today without even trying. And Ryan Kerrigan is going to be signing with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Steelers, it looked like, were on the short list. There were three teams that had major interest. Two were in the AFC. The Steelers were definitely one of them. He decided to stay in the NFC East. It's going to be interesting because there are some edge rushers out there. I mean, some of them have injury concerns. Olivier Vernon's one of them. You could also look at the fact that there's Justin Houston, who I think could be a favorite for them to possibly sign. And then you've got one more guy, Mr. Melvin Ingram, out of the Chargers, but he has some injury concerns as well. So that's something to go ahead and take a look at. But some of those guys you can really look at. Now, Wes Hickok says this: I think Chicolo is going to be the OLB we sign. We had a Slack channel conversation on this today, and I'm not going to get too far into it because I know tomorrow morning on the live mic, Michael Beck will be talking about this a little bit. I actually think it could be Chicolo. I brought him up, and I'm saying, wait, you know what? Maybe not Chicolo, But J-Rone Elliott is the guy they cut him, they bring him back, they cut him, they bring him back. And that's probably the kind of guy that you're going to see him sign. Someone with Steeler ties. I'm not saying I want this to happen, but come on, we've been around long enough to see this kind of thing happen when you go back to that well. Do you remember maybe about 5 years ago, it was LJ Fort, then Steven Johnson. LJ Fort, Steven Johnson. Cut LJ. Bring up Steven. Cut Steven. LJ's back.
So, yeah, and I think it's a very Steeler-like move. I mean, you're looking for depth, and Elliott's been in the system. He's not young. I mean, I think he's 29 or 30, and obviously, so he wouldn't. He's not somebody that would threaten to want to start like a James Harrison would, because he has no pedigree in that regard. And Chicolo's another one. That's a very Steeler-like move. You bring somebody in, you know him, and Chicolo would probably be more of an option to me than Elliott, because he's played for them and he's contributed and started a lot of games for them. But as far as one of the big names, it would have to be somebody who would not, like we talked about last week, somebody who would not come in here and say, I demand playing time. I demand more playing time, like Harrison did, because I think they're obviously, you're not going to play in front of TJ Watt, and I think they're really high on Highsmith.
Okay, Tony, I'm going to make a trading places bet with you. All right. So $1, I'm going to throw on the dollar, and I'm going to say that it's Elliott over Chicolo.
Okay.
So there you go. Shake.
Shake it. All right.
Shake it, don't break it.
I'm going to say Chicolo.
All right. So let's get back to the conversation. And somebody brought this up in the break. And, well, I'm not even going to touch that one. So we're going to go ahead and bring this up. We didn't talk about Green Bay. And somebody mentioned, I'm not sure who mentioned, they said, if you go ahead and look at the NFC teams, any team that beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl, so it would be the Cowboys and the Packers. I asked you about the Packers. I kind of don't consider the Packers really as a villain. I mean, there could be a rivalry just because, they go back so long for the great teams of all time. It's just something that I don't consider. But here's the thing. We talked this entire time about who we consider villains. How many teams, Tony, do you think consider the Pittsburgh Steelers as villains?
I think there are quite a bit that do. Yeah, I'd say. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but more than we realize. I think we talk about the Steelers being this beloved organization, and much like the Yankees, Notre Dame, and Lakers, as many fans. There's a lot of fans that love them universally, but there are probably a lot of fans that hate them universally too.
Garrett Slingerland says 31, and hey, that would be great. I would love it. I would love it. Tony and I talk about this all the time, and when we first started to get into podcasting, we used to joke that. In fact, there was a little bit of rivalry between Tony and I, just between each other, to say who was the Ric Flair, and then of BTSC. And then we decided that I would take the Ric Flair mantle. Tony wanted to be Arn Anderson. He wanted to be the enforcer. Right. And so that was our joke for the longest time, that Tony and I were 2 of 4. So because we love our wrestling. But that's the thing, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And and that's the thing. A lot of people hate the Steelers because they win, just like a lot of people hate the New England Patriots. They hate it. Somebody just brought up, Andrew Wilbar just brought up 49ers based on 5 Super Bowl wins, more of a rivalry, not a villain. Yeah, it's a rivalry there. You know what drove me crazy? Donald Nolan, no Bushwhackers, no. The Bushwhackers, we've got Touchdown Under. They could be the Bushwhackers.
There you go.
But those guys were terrible. They put them in the Hall of Fame, but that's another show. So, what I'm going to say here is, I'm I'm just laughing. Y'all should be sponsored by Manscaped. It would be a scream to hear Bad do that ad on Tales from 2 a.m.
Manscaped, what is that?
I don't know, but I think it's like the lawnmower for manscaping.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
Hey, if they want to pay us, I'll do the ad.
Right.
Just like the $1 Million Man said, everybody's got a price. Bad's got
Amen
a
to
cheap
that.
one. Bad's cheap. So here's the thing. That Super Bowl that we talked about earlier, I never watch the New England Patriots celebrate. Don't watch them celebrate. And I don't watch the Baltimore Ravens. When there was 5 seconds left in the game and I knew it was over, it was off and I was gone.
Right.
Didn't watch a highlight of them celebrating. Can't do it. But do you know how many fans, Steeler fans, rooted for the Baltimore Ravens so San Francisco could not tie them with 6? And I was aghast.
Say it. Yeah.
I could not believe it.
Right.
Because
and
how could you do that?
Exactly. And that's the difference between a rival and a villain. Is I was rooting for the 49ers in that game, and that would have given them 6, right? So, and the Ravens were going for 2, but I did not want John Harbaugh and Ray Lewis and those guys to win a Super Bowl. I just did not want that to happen. So to me, that's a great point. The 49ers are a respected rival, but they're not a villain.
But here's the thing. The Steelers can erase that 6 by winning 7.
Right.
They could control their own destiny and win 7. They can't erase a Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl win.
Right.
Because once it's there, it's there. They've got 2, and that's it. I mean, they can't get more. So, yeah, I was like, man, if the 49ers tie us with 6, great. We'll go get 7. And they'll be in the back burner again.
Right.
Man, it was nice passing up the Cowboys. I was going to root against the Cowboys anyways, but if the Cowboys were playing the Ravens, no way. I'll paint a silver and blue star on my belly and dance around. Because I cannot see those guys win. Now, this is probably going backwards a little bit. AFC Championship game. And I've done this. Ravens, Patriots. Who do you go? Where do you go?
I was rooting for the Patriots, believe it or not. I hate the Ravens. So maybe the Ravens are above the Patriots in my book. I don't know. That's a good. I forgot about that. I rooted for the Patriots back-to-back years. And when that field goal kicker, whoever he was, I forget who he was, when he missed that chip shot to tie the game in 2011, I cheered.
It was great.
Yeah.
Man, he was a former Cowboy. It was Billy Cundiff.
Okay.
Former Cowboy. So I'm pretty sure it was Billy C. So now let me ask you this. AFC Championship game, January of 2022. The Baltimore Ravens host the Cleveland Browns. Where do you go? And you can't root for lightning to strike and cancel the game.
Probably. Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I would have to. I think, like I talked about on Friday, it would be neat to see the Browns in the Super Bowl because it's never happened before. I'd have to go for it would be hard. I'd have to root for the Browns.
I'm going to say it. I can't. I would have to root for the Ravens.
Woo!
You know why?
Why is that?
You can't have Baker Mayfield and you can't have Myles Garrett in there. Can't. I cannot. There's some people that actually like Baker Mayfield. And somebody mentioned earlier, hey, yeah, I kind of root for him. He's been through a lot. I have no problem with that. But, I couldn't root for those guys. So now let's go back to the new topic. The new topic being, who considers the Steelers as villains? We know that every single team in the AFC North, just like we consider them villains, right. We do. I want to jump over to the NFC real quick because somebody said that we should consider the Seahawks villains. We don't.
Right.
However, The Steelers are high on the list of villains for the Seattle Seahawks. Remember, like 7 years after that Super Bowl, a Pittsburgh fan goes into a diner in Seattle, and the cook or the waitress got fired for spitting in it because they were Steelers fans.
Wow, I didn't know about that.
Spitting in the burger, yeah. Seahawks fans hate us.
Right.
They hate the Steelers because they feel that Steelers cheated in that game to win. Steelers paid off the ref. Paid off the refs.
Right.
The refs gave it to the Steelers. There's a lot that the Steelers did to win that game too.
An awful
real
lot.
quick. Bad itch. Tom Brady. I'll root for Tom Brady over Baker Mayfield any day and twice on Sundays because you know what? He's done it. I don't want to go down the road. He's still done it, and he still could do it without it. And he did it without it in Tampa Bay, so I really had no problem. But let me go ahead and get back to this. They hate him. Garrett Slingerland, I can't read this. Here we go. I still hear about how we cheated every day from my Seahawks fan coworker. They hate us. Now, let me say this. The 1988 Pittsburgh Pirates. They lost for so many years, 8 years in a row. They were terrible. There was a winning season or two in there. Like 1983, there was a winning season.
Right.
But they were bad most of that decade.
Yeah.
Then 1988 comes around, and they end up losing the division probably by 10 or more games to the New York Mets. And you had Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, and you had all those guys you hated. WDVE, I could still remember this. They came up with a slogan called Muck the Fets.
Yep.
And everybody, they had signs, Muck the Fets, and everybody hated the Mets with a passion. Hated them. I had a buddy who's a big Jets fan, a big Mets fan, big Knicks, big Islanders fan. He lives in Pittsburgh now.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald Nolan makes me laugh. I love it. I'm not going to read it. I'll just bring it up because that's hilarious. Man, I just got called Fredo. I'm Italian. You can't call me Fredo.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was I talked to my buddy about this. He's like, what's up with the Muck the Fets thing? He's like, you know what the Mets think about the Pirates? What the Mets think about the Pirates? I'm like, no, what? He's like, they don't think anything about them.
Right.
Nothing whatsoever. They said, they're not a rival to us. They're nothing. We don't even consider them. Nope. And so I thought about that. And I definitely thought about that. And that's kind of how we are to a lot of these teams. We don't care about the Seattle Seahawks. We're not going to put them
right.
We're not going to put them up there. They're not on our list. How many other teams can you say that to? Of course, we've got to be. Well, let me ask you this: Are we a villain to the Cowboys fans still? Probably.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear them talk. Go on any message board go on any YouTube highlight about the 70 Super Bowl Cowboys Steelers matchups, and you know there are a lot of Cowboys fans on. They're still bitter about something that happened 40 some years ago. A lot of the players from those teams, those Cowboys teams, Roger Staubach, Hollywood Henderson, those guys, that they are still bitter about those losses. And you know. To their point, you know, if those games had gone another way, the Cowboys would have been the quote unquote greatest dynasty of all time, and not the Steelers. So, you know, they're still holding on to that because look at the legacies of so many Steelers players because of those 70s victories in the Super Bowl. So, I'd say they still consider the Steelers villains.
All right, I'm not going to pick it up. I've got my microphone here. I broke my last one I never told you this, Tony. My microphone broke right before the draft. Mm-hmm. I'm talking the day of the draft, hours before the draft. My Yeti mic broke. And so I'm not going to drop it, but I've got a mic drop here. And I'm going to drop the mic right here. I'm going to say it. Cowboys fans, get ready. We turned down being America's team.
Yep.
Enough said. Drop it. You're not America's team. I'm ruining the mic drop. You're not America's team because the Roonies turned it down. The Sables went to the Roonies, said, we want to make you America's team. Like, we're Pittsburgh's team. We don't want that. Cowboys like, yeah, we'll take it. Boys. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, they're probably both of those teams have such a long-reaching fan base. I mean, they all over the country. It's really amazing for either one to call themselves America's team. How can you say that, really?
This was the joke earlier. I've heard worse jokes than this, but Bad Itch would root for an asteroid to hit the stadium.
Wow.
Because I remember asking somebody back in the day, I'm like, who are you rooting for, the Patriots or the Ravens? And they're like, yeah, I'm rooting for the Taliban. I'm like, dude, you can't say that. Uncool. Do not say that. That's horrible.
Right. Yeah.
But they said it. So the asteroid, I guess, it's still not good. It's funny, but it's not good. So let's look at this team. Here's another question. The Rams, the Vikings. You think they hate the Steelers? You think those fans hate the Steelers still?
Probably maybe some longtime fans, but currently, like the overall, no, I don't think they do, because they don't, they haven't had any big games against either one of those teams in decades.
I would say that the Philadelphia's probably hates us for the same reason that we hate them. Is there anybody else in the NFC that you could possibly look at? I think Seattle and Dallas definitely number one. Do you think there's anybody else? 49ers probably think of it the same way, as just a rivalry. Right. Do the Arizona Cardinals hate us? They take all our players.
Yeah, they might because of 43 and they think that San Antonio Holmes touchdown was not legit, which, I mean, come on, of course it was. So that's because it's so recent, and because it cost the Cardinals their one chance of winning a Super Bowl. Maybe Cardinals fans look at Pittsburgh as a villain. I can see that.
I forgot to mention them because I just forgot about them when I mentioned the two other teams that the Steelers beat in the Super Bowl. Yeah, the Cardinals are definitely there. So, yeah, Dusk Thunder says Cardinals 100% hate us. Yeah, maybe you put them on the list. Now let's go to the AFC. I'm just going to go down the list. I'm going to say this. Jacksonville, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Jacksonville considers us villains, even though they've done better than us in some playoffs. Right. I would say Jacksonville, yes. Let's continue in that division. The Colts.
Well, I mean, they ruined their chance of winning the Super Bowl probably in 2005. I mean, nobody saw that upset coming. I'd say they might look at us as villain, or the Steelers as villains.
All right. So let's go ahead and add them to the list. We have the Texans. No, the Texans don't really have their number one villain is probably their quarterback right now, or their owner, maybe.
Right.
So yeah, they're not of consequence. The Titans. Now, let's forget about the Houston Oilers, and we got to forget about the Houston Oilers with the Houston Texans fans too. Houston Texans fans might hate us because of the whole Oiler connection, but that was long time ago.
Right.
Even though it doesn't go away, but they probably do. But I'm still not going to throw them on the list. Titans, maybe. Yeah,
I mean, there were certainly a lot of years when Steve McNair was their quarterback when I had nightmares about them. They were kind of like the pre-Patriots, and the Steelers always seemed to come up short in big games against them. But the other way around, I don't know. I don't know if the Titans even think of the Steelers. Maybe they do.
And so let's see. Gosh, I just lost them already because, man, they're coming through fast. The Charles C. Brown Jr. Mentioned that he cried when the Steelers lost to the Titans in the playoffs. Man, I did too. I was
that was horrible.
Bad Itch says Earl Campbell would have had 3 rings if it wasn't for Mean Joe. Yeah. That's probably that. Eddie did us dirty. First down after first down.
Yep.
Yeah, but man, Joe Nedney, Academy Award, and he brags about it. I hate Joe Nedney because he brags about it.
That was
So let's go to the AFC West. Raiders probably still hate us.
Right.
Probably the Raiders probably hate us for more reasons than the Steelers would hate them. So it's a Fets situation, Mets Fets situation once again there. Chiefs. I think the Chiefs hate us.
Well, I think the Steelers always seem to come through against them in big games pre-Patrick Mahomes. Now that Patrick Mahomes is on the scene and they've won a Super Bowl and been to another one, they probably don't have that same hatred. If they had any kind of hatred for the Steelers, probably not anymore.
Broncos, Chargers.
I'd say I could see both teams hating the Steelers because they've had a lot of big games against Pittsburgh, both franchises over the course of their history.
Here's a team that we didn't talk about at all. Somebody mentioned it. I think Wes mentioned them. The Buffalo Bills. They're I could see us fast hating them because after going to that game with just having that, those fans are
right.
They're idiots. They're smart. They're good football fans.
Right.
They're loyal football fans. They're lunatics, Tony.
Yeah, the Bills Mafia, throwing themselves on a table, which I don't get. But hey, whatever, whatever floats your boat. But yeah, I could definitely see that growing into a villain because based on the last 2 years.
How much money would you need to jump off of an RV into a flaming 8-foot table?
It would have to pay off all my debt. Otherwise, I'm not doing it.
At this point, I do it for $100,000.
There you go. Yes.
So super chat. If you want to go ahead, you would have to put $200,000 in the super chat because YouTube takes half of it. So
go fund us.
Yeah. So if you want to see Bad jump through a table, that'll be no problem. I would jump through the burning table, but for $200,000 on the live chat, or if you just want to send us the $100,000 and just leave out the super chat, that's fine too. We have no problem with that. So get your heads together there. So let's go ahead and look at the rest of the AFC because I think the Bills kind of do hate us. I don't know if the Jets really hate us or not. Probably because we've kind of really always had their number.
Right.
Devon, get the tables. Really, I love Marky D. So the Patriots, do they hate us?
Patriots?
Yeah. That's the muck the fets question.
Yeah. Well, they've certainly had they've I don't know. I think they might think of the Steelers the way we think of, I hate to say this, the Bengals, because I think they know that no matter what happens in the regular season, once the playoffs roll around, at least this is during the Tom Brady era, that they were going to have the upper hand and they were going to find a way to win and find a way to win pretty easily. And that's usually what happens. So I think they might look at the Steelers as a rival, but not a villain.
Okay. That's interesting. I always wondered about that. I would kind of think that they do hate us, but I think you're more right. I'm going to go with you on that. That's really interesting. Miami Dolphins. Do the Miami Dolphins even have fans anymore?
They were the biggest deal in Miami. They were Miami's first big deal as far as the sports team, but yeah, they've fallen on some hard times over the last 4 decades. That's one thing that really made me mad about the Patriots run is that you had three organizations, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets with rich histories, and none of them would rise up and put up a fight against the Patriots. I don't know what happened to the Dolphins and their fans, but yeah, they're not what they used to be.
Now, we're going to get ready to wrap things up here. But I want to ask you, and I want to ask all of you, who hates us more than anybody? And I'm going to go back to the whole New York Mets thing that we're talking about. I will say this. We don't hate the Ravens as much as the Ravens hate us.
Right.
We don't hate the Browns as much as the Browns hate us.
Right.
And we definitely don't hate the Bengals. We hate them.
Right.
But we don't hate them as much as the Bungles fans, the Escaloozers, hate us.
Right. I like that.
Wes says Baltimore or Cleveland. I'm going to probably think he's right. Who do you think hates us more?
I'd say Cleveland, probably because of the years that the Steelers tormented them, and every time they went to the Cleveland, with the exception of a year or two, it was an easy win, and coming here it was usually a no contest. And Roethlisberger with the most quarterback wins, and I guess maybe Baker Mayfield finally passed him up for the most quarterback wins in Cleveland Stadium's history since they reformed. I'd say the Browns because I think the Browns fans they look at the Steelers as a team that's kind of tormented them for decades.
Mark Brusher and Matt Stofko, they're saying the Cowboys. JT Sports is saying the Arizona. You know what? I don't think there's a wrong answer here. And I'm kind of going to agree with Tony that I think they hate us more. But let's go back to Ric Flair here. It's so great to be hated, man.
Yeah.
If you're J.R. Ewing, if that was the guy they talked about, the man you love to hate, J.R. Ewing on
Right.
Dallas,
Right.
Friday nights at 9 on CBS. You know, they were all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Who shot JR? They filmed everybody shooting JR because you couldn't guess.
Right. It was
filmed
great.
9 or 10 people shooting him.
Yeah.
And nobody knew. You can't even do that these days because someone's leaking.
Right.
My gosh, we can't even have an NFL schedule, Tony, without the games being leaked. Oh, we're going to do it at 8:00.
What's the point? Yeah.
Yeah, and they leaked almost every game.
Right. Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, but it's cool. I'm getting to the point where I think it's cool. And even though I hate the phrase just me, you're absolutely right. They hate us because they ain't us. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Now, if you are a New England Patriots fan, you say that all the time, but I'm going to amend that a little bit. You hate us because you ain't us. And that's the New England Patriots fans to me. But with that being said, hey, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. This was fun. And I had a lot of fun with this because, you know, we've been talking so much about the after effects of the draft, what's going to happen, where the Steelers are going to be. We're going to talk about that on a bunch of shows this week. So definitely tune in if you want to hear more about that. We are going to definitely have all of that and more. We're going to be talking about mini camps. We're still talking about the schedule. We are still talking, and not only are we talking about this stuff, and you might think, man, they talk about us way too much. Talk about it way too much. The best thing about BTSC here, we've got 10 to 11 different podcasters with different points of view on these subjects. So you got to check that out. It's really cool. So with that being said, thank you so much. We cannot do these shows without, I'm just going to read the people on the screen. Mark Brushers, the Wes Hickocks, the Creacuses, the Andrew Wilbars, the Bad Itches, the Kathy Fords. And if I didn't mention your name, I want you to think in your head that I did because I mean it. I can't mention all 81 on the screen right now, but I love you. And you check us out because you trust us and we trust you to be here for us. We can't do this without the motivation from all of you guys and gals in that live chat and even not here. You're not here live right now, and I don't know your name because you're listening to me and Tony on Wednesday morning driving to work in Tuskegee, Alabama. You know, you're there and you're checking us out, and that's why we love you. Dave Shipley gives us $5. Cleveland, need an email if you didn't get it, bad. I will get to that, Dave. I promise you. Thanks for the $5. Dave, love you, man. Thank you so much. Garrett, love you too. $5. This one was fun. Thanks, guys. All of you, thank you. I love it. And it's so fun to hang out and have this forum. And we're just like you. We're Steeler fans just like you. We just convinced people to give us this show. And that's it.
Exactly. Right.
We're no different. We just got lucky and got this show. So thank you. So for Tony Julius Duffio, my name is Brian Anthony Davis. And just when you think you have got all of the answers,
we keep changing the questions.